is a lifestyle. You're never off. If you have people who are in the midst of something, it's the biggest thing they're doing in their life. It's stressful, it's personal, it involves their everyday life, their children, their spouse, their money, their job. Most people are moving because they have a forcing factor.
Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Andy Burton Show.
Thanks
Super
for
excited
having
to be
me here.
Yeah. So today my guest is Cheryl Larson with eXp Realty. Cheryl runs a team based out of Stillwater, Minnesota. I feel like I've known you for probably a decade now, it feels
At least.
like.
I think maybe longer.
Maybe longer? Okay. How long have you been a realtor?
20 years.
20 years. Cool.
Started in 2005, right
2005.
before the world changed.
Cool. And you're in what I perceive as one of the more fascinating places of real estate, like in the Twin Cities, meaning Stillwater. So, and for those that don't know Stillwater, it's a historic town, birthplace of Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
So it's so cool and unique. It's not the suburbs. It's got a mixture, right? You got
Right.
the suburban, but then you got the cool historic downtown, which is so unique.
Well, and all of the lakes and rivers, river being the St. Croix, and just the whole river valley there gives so much opportunity for being outside and doing so many fun things. So
Totally. Lifestyle community, I feel
it's
like,
a
right?
lifestyle. And it's
Yeah.
really, the fun thing about Stillwater is it is part of the Twin Cities, but the town has kept its autonomy. So it's really a separate little town, even though it's grown a lot in the last 20 years. It's maintained its own identity, and it's a great place for outdoors and for the arts and, boating and biking and fishing, all those things that people like, and walking. It's a great walking town.
It is. For our listeners, if you don't know, it's on the St. Croix River, which is a national scenic waterway. What year was Stillwater founded? Do you happen to know?
That depends on how you identify founded. So there were people who came and started the town in the early 1800s. I think the first woman to come to Stillwater was about 1829, so they had clean laundry then.
I love it.
Somebody brought his sister to help run his household. But it was a lumbering town, so started by people who came here to cut the original timber that was here. It was all virgin timber along the St. Croix Valley, and the sawmills were in Stillwater because they could pull the timber off the river there and then send it down the river as boards.
Very cool. Yeah. So such a unique area, and I want to chat a little bit about that because Stillwater. We'll get into this later in the pod, but it is a community that has a massive mixture of different types that you probably wouldn't see almost anywhere else. Meaning you have condos, you have multifamily, there's a lot of commercial sales, you got residential, you got the old, you got the new. Like it's this really unique mixture in such a small area that you got to have multifaceted skill set as a realtor.
Right.
Yeah, where a lot of other suburban areas, it's like single family, townhouse.
Yeah, and
That's
then
it.
we have farms,
Yeah.
and acreage and all of that surrounding us. And
Luxury properties, and all this is within 2 miles, which is
sometimes 2 blocks.
Yeah, very, very cool. So let's get the backstory for you. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Iron Mountain, Michigan, which is in the UP. So I'm a Youper.
Okay, very cool. You come from a car family, right?
Yeah, I grew up in a home business. When I was a kid, I worked in a garage, and I worked in the front office some days and washed cars other days, or sometimes all on the same day. So,
Cool. So you got a really unique background for that.
Yep, started working when I was 13, and I always worked. Well, maybe not always. I have 4 kids, and I took a few years, 16 years, to be an at-home mom. But that's kind of hard work, too.
Yeah, hardest job on earth, right? So how do you transition then from stay-at-home mom to real estate? What was that moment that you decided that you were going to make the change?
Well, I sold real estate in Maryland in the 1980s, early, mid-80s. And when I had our first child, we moved back to Minnesota to be closer to family, chose Stillwater, and stayed in the same house for 35 years, raised our kids there. And it was always part of the plan when our kids got old enough that I would go back to work. And I surveyed all kinds of other careers and considered going back to school. Because I was an at-home mom, I needed to make enough money to help with college, and we lived pretty lean for a lot of years. I said, well, I know that industry from it had changed a lot, but I know the industry and I like it. So I decided to get licensed in 2005. And the big change was in the 80s, we didn't have the internet. We had typewriters. We wrote everything out on forms that had carbon paper in between. Carbonless paper was kind of a new thing then. So a lot of changes in the physical day-to-day work. And I have a husband who's in the tech industry, and he's doing stuff that's probably 5 years before we'll see it as consumers. But he encouraged me to just embrace technology. So I went from, the technology of the home, the washing machine and the dishwasher, to just trying to learn and understand, build a website, and embrace every kind of technology that I could to build my business. And I think I did that at the right time.
Yeah, what perfect timing. I feel like
Yeah.
you've turned into a powerhouse here in Stillwater. When did you make the decision to move beyond just yourself as a realtor and have a team?
That was a long time ago when I was back at Coldwell Banker. And a new agent joined our office, and she was watching me work, and she was like, you need help. And I want to help you. And her name was Mary Ann Bowe. So she teamed up with me. She was like, I want to do this with you and learn and grow with you. And she was my biggest cheerleader and helped me stay organized, and just was great with every aspect of, kind of moving me ahead, but alongside of me. So that started the team. Then I had a client who had retired, and his name is Jerry Eklund. I don't know if you remember meeting him. He worked with me for a long time. He had been an executive and always in sales. He retired, and about a year later, he came back to me, and I had helped them buy and sell a few houses. Came back to me, and he said, okay, I bought a bike. I'm reading books. I golf. I need to go back to work. I want to work on your team. I'm like, Jerry, you were like an executive. You had people. And he's like, no, I love this business you're in, and I want to work with you. And so he became a team member and a mentor at the same time, because I was able to draw on his experience from all of his career of sales and business. And it was kind of a unique relationship. And he was on our team for a long time. He just retired about 2 years ago.
I love that. So he was leading from the middle.
Yep. And
Right.
Mary Ann was leading from alongside. And I really feel like I benefited from, and both of them were 10 years older than me. And now I'm like one of the old ladies in the industry. But they had a lot of life experience and other business experience that they brought to it, which I think is true in real estate. A lot of people choose real estate as a second or third career, and they bring with them things that they've learned in other industries, and I think we benefit from that.
That's awesome. So with your background of, being a full-time stay-at-home mom, like I have felt that way of us working together. I'm like, you're like the real estate mom. You're like, come here, come under my arm. I'm going to guide. Like, I feel like that's like a mantra. You don't say it, but you do it. Like in your business, that
Yeah.
you're going to hold their hand and guide them in that way, like they're your own child.
Yeah, some people in my life say, you're not their mom.
Yeah. So you're really good at that.
I
Is that
like being a
purposeful,
mom.
or is that natural for business?
I think part of it is natural. I'm oldest daughter, had a lot of kids around me all the time. Oldest niece in one family, so all the little cousins. So I've always had a lot of responsibility, and just was raised to be I guess, raised to be in charge and guiding other people. And that was just instilled in me as a child, I think. That we were raised differently then. Childhood was different.
Yeah, a little tougher, right?
Different. I mean,
Different.
it was,
Yeah.
there were great things. I'm not going to complain. My parents were and are great people, and they really worked hard at, I'm going to get teary. My dad's 84 years old, and he still goes to work every day.
Right, in the mechanic shop?
He has a Chevrolet dealership with my brother. I think it's really my brother's dealership now. And my brother's daughters work in the dealership, and they kind of call it Grandpa Daycare sometimes.
Cool.
But Grandpa's there,
Yeah.
and he's involved, and he's got his role in the dealership still.
Very cool. So I would imagine he's been influential then on helping you too on the business side, right?
Oh yeah.
Of even just communication, of how to communicate with people.
Well, and I think just growing up in a family business is a lifestyle. And I think I think in real estate, we hear people say this all the time. Oh, so you're still doing that real estate thing, or you're, kind of like it's a side hustle. We'd never say that to a nurse or, a teacher. Real estate people look at it differently from the outside. Real estate is a lifestyle. You're never off. I mean, you can disconnect a little bit, but if you have people who are in the midst of something, it's the biggest thing they're doing in their life. And it's stressful. It's personal. It involves their everyday life, their children, their spouse, their money, their job. And most people are moving because they have a forcing factor. And a lot of times those forcing factors are difficult situations like, job change, or marriage is a good one. Divorce isn't sometimes a not so good one. Sometimes it is a good thing. Death is really hard to get through with people. And, it's lots of grieving as people are losing mobility and have to sell their house. So we have all kinds of things that we work through with people, and they need us all the time. You can't say, don't call me if you're upset about something or if you're questioning something. And it's also something they do once or twice a lifetime, and we do it every day.
You're absolutely right. Being attentive on that is really, really important, and
that's-
being responsive to that, which is tough. It's a give and take, right?
It is.
Like the professional side of that, and then there's the personal side of that, of you're out to dinner with your spouse and you're getting a text and you're like, I'm trying to give my undivided attention, right? So you've been doing this a long time, and I feel like you probably adopted some decent boundaries on that for others that are learning in this industry. Like, how have you established some boundaries so then you can have like the time that your family deserves, but also give the client what they need too? What have you done for boundaries on that?
That might be the thing I struggle with the most, but we try to have date night. My husband and I buy tickets to the opera. We go to the opera on just a regular, we do date night on Thursday night because weekends can be really tough. And I try not to work on Saturday nights and Sunday nights. We do a lot of family things. And try to have friends over. We're very spontaneous. If I find that I have a light day, I'm like, let's make a dinner and have a bunch of people over. So I am super, super, I don't know if the word is lucky. I think it's much more than luck. I've got the most wonderful husband, and he's been supportive since day one, both with helping me with technology and going to ski races and making food and, doing whatever needs to be done to help our family get through whatever needs to happen. I try to dedicate time to him as much as I can. Like, if I'm going to have an evening off, we do something. We go somewhere, we get out and go listen to music someplace, get out on the river, go for a walk, go for a bike ride, go snowshoeing or whatever season it is. We do a lot of outdoor stuff.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that. So right now, I'm seeing, so it is summer 2025, right? And I have personally, in the last 120 days, started to witness in our market, because every market, you got sub-markets, you got the macro market, the micro market, right? And specifically in the Twin Cities, the market has changed in the last 4 months.
Really since Mother's Day.
You're right. It's really in the last 60 days or less that all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's starting to be a little bit of a shift here, right? And it's nothing dramatic for our listeners. It's not, the market's crashing. It went from, I saw lots of multiple offers on properties. It was kind of the 2021 style, like boom, boom, boom. Under 500 properties were selling like crazy. And then all of a sudden now you got certain properties sell really, really quickly. And then the rest sit. Right? Tell me, what are you seeing on your end for that right now?
That's a big question, because there are still, like you said, some of those properties that are selling really fast, and you're in multiples with one client, and that's usually under 450.
Specifically in Stillwater area, under 450, or are you seeing it everywhere?
Seeing it in a lot of places. And first-time home buyers are still struggling. Unique properties are still, the lower-end unique properties are still super busy. But the upper end of the market is quieter, but I think there's a lot of reasons for that. First of all, it's summer in Minnesota. Summers are short. Families are busy. And like Mother's Day is the start of fishing opener, and get your boat out, open up your cabin. So there's always a seasonal shift there, and I'm trying to still determine if this is a real shift or if this is, I think it's a nationwide real shift, but I don't think it's, I think it's partially seasonal. So people are busy in the summer, and we have a short amount of time to be outside and go to the cabin and go on vacation. The summer is short. So I always think that people start buying in February and they want to move by June. And we close a lot of stuff June, July, August, but we're working on listings now that will come on in September, October. So I think there are still people moving. It's a little quieter than it was earlier. We are seeing some sellers reducing prices or offering some incentives, more willing to take a contingent offer. And then buyer perception is that it's still a fiery, hot market a lot of times, and they are worried that they're going to have to compete or pay more, and they're worried about getting their house sold in a short amount of time. So talk a little bit about that. There's a lot of people who I think would move if they thought they could move. And sometimes once they go through the process of getting pre-approved and identifying a property and talking about what it would take to get their house on the market, they look at, they've got a 3.5% interest rate on the house that they have now. They're going to have a higher interest rate on what they're buying. There's a longer time of figuring that out.
What I'm seeing on that, though, right now, is most of the people have already figured that out by the time they get to us. So they've already made that decision, right? Like by the time, if they're out looking at houses, they've come to the realization that, we're in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and it's time to upgrade because we're having our 3rd child, or the kids are outgrowing sleeping in bunk beds. Right? It's been so great to have this super cheap payment for so long, but there comes a point in time we got to rip that Band-Aid off because we want to live the lifestyle for our children,
right,
in our family, right? And they just say, yes, it sucks to let that 3% rate go, but we got to do what's better for the family as a whole. So I'm seeing,
and I think there's a perception that they aren't going to be able to get a contingent offer accepted, because you haven't been able to get a contingent offer accepted for a long time. It's been really hard for people who have to sell and then buy.
This is a normalization. It's still a seller's
Yeah.
market. Like, so we're still in a seller's market,
Right.
but we went from such an extreme for it to shift just a little bit. It feels like a big shift. It's like, no, we just came off of like the lowest of lows of inventory. So we aren't even normalized yet.
Right. We
We're
still have
just-
low inventory. We're
Yeah.
still waiting for houses to come to the market for some buyers.
Correct.
And when those houses do come to the market, then everybody's on them. So the
Yeah.
buyers that are ready and they've got their ducks in a row, and we've been, in some cases, we will list something, withhold it. We're not advertising it or telling anybody about it even, because those people are just waiting for a house to hit the market so that they can move. And so we still have low inventory. And so when that house comes to the market, they're hoping that they can be competitive enough by having their house photographed, ready for showings. We've decluttered and, gotten everything out of the house so that they can drop it in the market in a heartbeat.
Yeah, so if they get an offer accepted on a home, contingent or even
Right.
non-contingent, because we're
Right.
seeing a lot of those types of buyers like that more seasoned seller.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing the seasoned sellers, they are willing to buy a new house non-contingent,
Right.
because they're later in life, they're more financially stable, or,
Right,
so
right.
they're saying, hey, we'll go under contract. Hopefully we can sneak our house on the market and offer accepted right away, maybe even close before,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes they just, bridge over to the other side. I'm seeing a lot of that right now.
Yeah. And I think that what you said a minute ago is very true. We're in a more normal market. We haven't had a normal market in 5 years. Really, we came into 2020 with the lowest inventory ever, and it got worse from there. And the fire to buy was really hot. And so that fueled, even as interest rates went up, and it didn't make sense for a while. But it was the low inventory has been the push in the market that's been keeping prices up.
So how do you help a seller with that right now? Because how you're advising a seller on pricing when they're going to market is different now.
It is, and it's really hard because in some cases we have spring comps we're looking at comps from the last 6 months, and they closed a month ago, but they wrote the offer in April. And so the buyer came in really heavy in April and paid more than list and closed at a higher price than what we might be able to get in July or August.
Mm-hmm.
That's really hard for anybody who's selling anything to look at as, that window was winter, spring market, and we're in normal summer market with less buyers. And a lot of the buyers who were going to make a move this summer bought in March and April and closed in June.
So let's get real on that, because this is probably one of the less fun conversations as a realtor
Yeah.
to have, right?
Yeah.
That here you are, you've been trying to sell your house for 500. And I know because I hear these conversations with realtors all the time, you're really thinking internally, it's gonna sell at 470, right? Like it sucks, right? But I have to walk this person to that point.
Right.
Like, how do you
And
do
it's
that?
really hard because their expectation was based on when they made the decision to sell months ago. And with a changed market, it is sometimes baby steps. It depends. Every situation is different. There isn't an always. You can't just say, oh, you're going to have to reduce $25,000 to get it sold. $25,000 is a lot of money. There's a lot of dollars in between. So sometimes going down 6,000 or 8,000 at a time till you hit that sweet spot is the way to go. And sometimes they have to move right now, and they have a different motivation, and they're going to jump down. So it depends. And sometimes they're on the market saying, well, if it doesn't sell this year, we'll just stay here for another year and we'll move next year. And that's fine too. if they don't want to move that badly, they like their house and they don't have a big forcing factor. Maybe they didn't get the house they wanted to buy, or, they have their other house and they've got a tenant that they're going to put in. That's fine. We'll come back to the market another time. I think that you have to look at everyone's situation and work through it with them in their timing and their needs. There isn't a one way to do it. It's a lot of times it's reducing the price, but sometimes it might be, okay, take it off the market and we'll put it on in February next year. Might be a different market in February, but we talk about that too. If interest rates go up and buyers go down, next February might not be any better than it is right now.
Yeah, we even saw that last fall, or kind of end of summer, where rates came down a little bit and there was a little surge like of buyers from that. So it's interesting how you have these little sub movements that,
right,
like if all of a sudden a little affordability picks up, specifically the first time home buyers, will kind of jump out a little quicker.
Yeah, and even the second buyers that have a little bit of equity in their house and they've got some, like you said, now they need another bedroom or they need a yard because they've got kids and dog and life changed. Yeah. So it's a very personal process, and I think we work through it on an individual basis, and we talk about it a lot and work through the shifts.
Yeah, that's experience right there speaking, right? There's no question about that. So when you're helping clients right now, the Stillwater market, you have condos, large condo buildings, right? Then you have kind of the historical, you got the small, unique condos, right? That are kind of like scattered all over the place, townhomes, suburban style developments. Like, it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So, it seems like we'll have buyers, especially maybe the more senior buyers, like they're jumping around to different ones.
Yeah.
It seems like they're just like condo. It's like, I want to live specifically in Stillwater for the lifestyle. And they're like looking at all sorts of different types. Do you see that too?
We talk a lot about identifying the lifestyle you want, not necessarily the house. So once we figure out the lifestyle, you can live in a lot of different kinds of houses. And you can adapt places. So we work with a lot of people who are buying things and making changes after they buy them. So that's a whole nother section of, how do you look at the property? Is it going to be worth it if you do big changes to the house? And you're right, there are pockets even within the historic neighborhoods of Stillwater where you have a mid-mod, or you have a house that was an infill house and it was built in 2008. So we seek out some of those houses. Sometimes we're writing letters to sellers saying, hey, we have a buyer who really wants to live in your neighborhood and this is the kind of house they want to live in. Would you like to move? We do a lot of that.
Yeah, because it's with the historic homes, from my experience of literally just driving around, it's like street specific. Some streets are more premier, it feels like, than others in terms of some of, like, especially with the water view ones too.
Yeah,
right?
Riverview is a big deal.
Yeah, it almost seems like, is there a value? Are you seeing a significant, outside of Riverview, which obviously would pick up value, but is there actual higher value on certain streets?
I wouldn't say it's the street.
Okay.
Certain streets are super desirable with the water view, or, you're by the set of stairs and you've got a big vista of Stillwater. A view is always important. So people like that. With historic houses, there's so much to evaluate. And you can have a house that's $250,000 next to a house that's $1.2 million. That $250,000 house is also super valuable to the people who want to live in a small house in a beautiful neighborhood. And so you might have a house that's really neglected, or maybe was fixed up in the 90s, So they did a lot of work to it, but it's out of date now and worn out. Essentially, if it was done in the 90s, all the cabinet doors start to get a little tired and the bathrooms are tired. So there's a lot of intensity for both in the marketplace. So it doesn't, there's a buyer for everything.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's so much to say about the historic market. And that's been a big focus of my business because that's the kind of house I lived in, and I love conservation and preservation and all of that. But I think when people are looking at these neighborhoods, it's going to depend on what the people want to do with the house. If they want to move in and live there the way it is, or if they want to buy a project, or if they want something that's super original, historic, or if they want something that is updated to the 21st century with, reasonably updated bathrooms and kitchen and that kind of thing. They all have value, and it is hard to price them.
Yeah, I would
because
imagine.
there's a lot of variables.
So I've helped my clients buy historic homes. I've had some of them say they absolutely love it and it achieved every dream they've ever had. And I've also had clients that have bought it and sold them in less than 1 year because it was a bigger project than they wanted to take on. So if someone's looking at a historic home, is there some red flags that they should be aware of when they're touring a house? Like, what are common things that they need to be aware of when they're buying?
Well, again, we go back to lifestyle and
Yeah.
we start talking about, so what do you like to do on weekends? Golf or scrape paint? It's pretty, are you hands-on? Do you have a lot of tools? Do you like to buy tools? Because if you buy an old house and you like to work on it yourself, you have a hobby right here. If you like to go away on weekends and spend 3 months someplace else in the wintertime, you need to have a budget for having some help because old houses need more attention and they need more maintenance, and the maintenance isn't always just go to Menards and get something. It's sometimes you have to know a guy that can make something. So we talk a lot about that when we look at old houses. And some old houses, they're all painted up cute and, it looks lovely. But then we go in the basement and we look up and figure out, we look at the hard parts of the house. We look at the parts that, has there been a history of water coming in? My thing about old basements is they all get wet. The only way to keep them dry is to make sure water doesn't get near them because they will get wet. There's nothing holding the water out. It's just stacked stones. So when we go around a basement, we try to figure out, is it actively wet right now? Are you going to get a little seepage, or are you going to get big puddles, or are you going to have to get out a pump? This has been a wet summer, so it's a really good year to look at old basements. If they're okay with that kind of stuff in old houses, then old houses are for them. But if that freaks people out when you're in the basement and you say, when it's storming, you're likely going to get water in here. And there's gutter work and there's regrading. The only way you're going to keep the water out is to keep it away from the house. That might be taking the soil back along the house and putting in a membrane to move the water away from the house. We talk about all that stuff. And it's hard conversations because they might love the house, but they don't want to take on stuff like that. Sometimes we talk about those things and they're like, yeah, get the shovel, let's do it.
Yeah, from personal experience, I still own a house from 1890, my first house, and the basement is stacked stone with gutters, with regrading, and you just have to accept that there's water that runs through it. Like if it rains, you just have to. It's a rental now, so every single person that I bring in I say, okay, you have to accept the fact that this is a kind of like a dry cellar type basement. There's a washer and dryer down here. It's all you do, and then you go upstairs, right? Like
It's not living space.
Yeah,
You're not going to make a
yeah.
family room down here.
no, not at all. So if they can accept that, right?
Yeah.
I think that from owning an old home, I know firsthand exactly what you're saying. Dealing with wood rot and dealing with some things that you better either have deep pockets or
a
know how to
long
do
view.
it. Yeah.
And a long view is fine. It's not HGTV. It's not going to get fixed in a half hour. Some houses are every Saturday of your life, you're going to have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And there aren't enough Saturdays.
Yeah. So then you can flip the opposite of that downtown where you have the newer condos.
Right.
Right? Or old historic buildings. You're just seeing kind of one at a time of these historic buildings being converted into condos. It kind of seems like most of them have kind of happened now.
Yeah, I think it's gotten so expensive to do that now that, that happened in Stillwater. I think that was one of the turning points in Stillwater. We had some really cool people who had a lot of energy and desire to keep these historic buildings where they are. So the Nelson School was a big project. The city was going to, or the school district, somebody was going to have it torn down, and it was bought for, I think, $1 a long time ago, and saved from getting torn down. And they had a vision for what it could be, and it's been people's homes ever since. So it's condos in a old school building that was built right around the turn of the century, maybe a little bit before that, tall ceilings, interesting spaces, but it has its own quirkiness too. Mm-hmm. I mean, there is underground parking in it, but it's not for every vehicle. Yeah. But it's walkable, and there are some people that have lived in there since it was converted. So they've owned condos there since they became condos. Mm-hmm. Those are great buildings, and there are there are 3 churches that were converted to. And the old post office is a residence. That's also a really cool building. I don't know if you've ever been in that one. But I think the people who did that when these buildings were really, really cheap they were a big part of keeping Stillwater's history. So a lot of towns, they just tear that stuff down, or it falls into disrepair and, ends up getting torn down or demolished at some point. I think in the late 70s, early 80s, we had a great group of people. Mike McGuire converted some buildings downtown. He was very much into adaptive reuse and saved buildings that would have otherwise been torn down. Do you know who Mike McGuire is?
I do. I love his architecture. There's a McGuire house on my street, or one of his partners actually, on the street that I live on. So
yeah, but the building that Darn It Anyway, it used to be Smallies in that space, and now it's kind of a knitting center where people go and spend a weekend and do projects together. That building was, kind of recreated by Mike McGuire, and then the what is it called? The Commander Building, the grain elevator. Mm-hmm. When our kids were young, there was a climbing wall inside of it, so it was adapted for different uses. There's a coffee shop, gaming restaurant in there now. There's condos up in the top of the grain elevator.
Oh, there's condos. I've noticed the windows up. That's a condo. Wow, that would be a really cool place for a condo.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Yeah, it's cool. So if you guys haven't been to Stillwater, you need to visit and call Cheryl Larson, because she's the expert on giving you a tour of what the lifestyle would look like.
That's another Mike McGuire, vision for a building that every town along the river had a grain elevator. Mm-hmm. It was. In fact, when our kids were young, they would see grain elevators in towns when we were traveling, and they'd be like, is there a climbing wall in there?
That's great. That's great. I love it. I could talk to you forever on the history so I love the whole St. Croix Valley area, and I feel like you really embody the lifestyle, and I think that's why you're a magnet and you're a top producer like, specifically in the St. Croix Valley, and an expert on how to be able to
Thanks.
help people for that. So, so I'm grateful for your time and you
Thank you.
sharing with us today. So if anybody's looking to buy a home in the St. Croix Valley, Cheryl Larson with eXp Realty, she's your girl. So thanks for being a
Andy.
guest today.
Thanks, that's
cool.
nice.